must not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam.
The President of the United States went to the United Nations and said that the future, if he's got anything to do with it, will not belong to those who slander a particular religion. You cannot criticize a religion if you're Obama, and that one religion in particular. And of course, the Muslim definition of slandering Islam is to criticize Islam. That was the American president. Joining me now from New York is the managing director of the Discourse Institute, George Igler. He's actually in the UK, coming to North America with a warning that we might just lose our freedom of speech too. Hey, welcome to the show, George.
Hello, Ezra. It's a pleasure to be able to speak to you.
Now, you come from the United Kingdom, which used to be the mother of these freedoms. John Milton, Areopagitica, the key defense of freedom of speech, and other great moments in free speech, defending Salman Rushdie, at least with police protection. Christopher Hitchens being from the School of Free Speech. What has happened to England to make it move towards the kind of Barack Obama censorship that we're seeing?
Well, what we've identified, and like in the way that we sort of delivered the original principles that governed free speech and allowed free speech around the world, we're sort of the test case for the repressions that are happening against free speech, and that's what Discourse, the institute I founded, is engaged in. We're investigating the prosecutions against free speech. Someone gets literally put in prison every week in the UK now for saying the wrong thing on Twitter, for example. And I've come over to the US to warn people over here that that they're headed in the same direction. And I'm generally met with a sort of incredulous response until the last 2 weeks that there's a First Amendment here and that's going to stop everything. And I have to sort of sit people down and relate to them that we had Magna Carta, we had a Bill of Rights of our own, and British people fought the bombs of the Luftwaffe in order to be able to preserve them. And nevertheless, a couple of decades down the road, with the applause of the press, these things were burnt. Yeah. Because it really doesn't matter what the principles are, because they're just pieces of paper. What matters is the extent to which the people whose job it is to defend those freedoms are actually genuinely interested in doing so rather than doing something else. And I think a lot of people's eyes have been opened by the Benghazi incident, that the defender of the free world with a First Amendment issue was faced with his embassy being invaded, the guards killed, the ambassador sodomized and murdered, and the place torched to the ground, and his response was to apologize. Yeah. And we're non-partisan, strictly so. And I don't think John McCain would have done anything different, but I think it's opened people's eyes up to what matters, and that's what our analysis has shown, is a culture, is a climate. And if your climate has 3 specific characteristics, that means your politicians are definitely going to start restricting your free speech.
And what are those 3 qualities that would lead us to lose our freedom of speech?
The first thing that one can notice is a subtle change in values. What we observe is that the yardstick of the validity of an opinion ceases to become veracity. It ceases to become truth and becomes instead the sort of emotional response that is elicited by the view. So 20 years ago in the UK, if you disagreed with someone, you said that's a lie. Now you say that's offensive, and that is deemed to be a rebuttal. That all contributes to the idea that opinions are dangerous. And it feeds into the second thing, which is a redefinition of the concept of incitement, which was originally the only exception that we allowed. Anglo-Saxon institutions have always valued free speech, but we allowed this exception called incitement. You go and rob that bank, you go and murder that man. But we've changed judicially, legislatively, the definition of incitement to hatred, to incitement to religious hatred, to incitement to racial hatred. Yeah. And you can see this once again with the torching of the embassies. You and I both know, everyone in the human race knows, that if someone burns down the embassy, the only person responsible is the person who holds the match, or possibly the cleric who says, go and burn down that embassy. But because we've disentangled this deterministic notion of free will, responsibility starts to become in the direction where the most people are pointing. And the third and the final quality is something very disturbing that happens to the media. And this is what's very much happened to America in the last 2 weeks. the media starts to become less and less about giving more information, more opinion, more views, and about restricting them. And it starts to have an obsession with people's motives. There was a very instructive interview last week, I think, with one of your favoured guests, Pamela Geller, on CNN, about her subway posters. And the fascinating thing was the journalist just asked the same question over and over again. What are your motives? What are your real motives for doing this? I know you're free to do this, but should you? And what all this does is it contributes to a political environment in which politicians start saying, well, what would be the harm? Right. What would be the harm in restricting free speech? Right. Surely free speech is dangerous, and it would be less harm to restrict it. And why I came to America is to tell people that there are horrendous harms that will come down the road if America is not careful.
I remember about a year and a half ago when we had on a fella from the UK who was playing a song called Kung Fu Fighting, great music song, and the police literally called him because he had offended some Chinese or Japanese passers-by for singing a rock song. And that was just the humorous example. Listen, I went through this myself in Alberta when I published the Danish cartoons of Mohammed. Yes. Now, let me ask you this. I make the case that most journalists, they say they're for freedom of speech so they seem like they're noble and that they have a morally superior job than, say, being a plumber. But when push comes to shove, they actually don't fight for freedom of speech for beliefs they oppose. They support freedom of speech for their own allies, but never for the hard cases, never for the Holocaust deniers, never for people who criticize Islam. To me, the rot starts in the media. Do you disagree? Is the problem somewhere else?
No. I do agree with you, but I think that the media are just an apex of a trend in opinion. That opinion being that we've basically lost sight. We've allowed freedom to become cultural, and therefore it gets subjected to a sort of multicultural meta-narrative analysis, that certain people believe in freedoms and other people from different cultures don't. And the reason why we believe that is we've lost sight of why freedom of speech is so vitally important. The fault of the narrative, its fatuous flaw, is the idea that we can decouple the benefits of our society from the freedoms that enable them. Freedom of speech, specifically, and this is directly relevant to journalism, the wonderful thing that it enables is the power of scrutiny. In a truly free society, everyone from the prince to the pauper is subject to that scrutiny. And that's why other places in the world have more corruption, why they have more bribery, why they have more high crimes and misdemeanors. And we have less because you can be scrutinized.
George, we got to wrap it up there. But my gosh, I've agreed with every single word you've said. I think you bring a great perception to the problem. And everything you say that's happening in the United Kingdom, I see the roots taking root in Canada and the United States too. You keep up your fight. We'll have you on again.
It's a global fight.
Thank you, George.
Thank you. I look forward to it, Ezra. Take care.
Coming up.